When you hear the name Warren Buffett, what instantly comes to mind? The media has painted a very specific, almost heartwarming picture for you. They show you an adorable, grandfatherly figure who still lives in the exact same modest 5-bedroom house in Omaha, Nebraska that he bought back in 1958. They love to remind you that he drives a regular car, pays for his daily McDonald's breakfast with exact change, and happily drinks 5 cans of cherry Coke every single day. They sell you the image of a simple, folksy, patient man who just happened to pick the right stocks and graciously waited for them to go up. But this mainstream narrative is a carefully constructed illusion. The man drinking that cherry Coke is not just a friendly grandpa giving out wholesome financial advice. Behind that warm smile is the architect of the most ruthless, perfectly calibrated, and mathematically flawless wealth-generating machine in human history. Look at the other titans of the modern era. Elon Musk built reusable rockets. Steve Jobs revolutionized human communication with the iPhone. Jeff Bezos completely re-engineered global logistics. Warren Buffett? He didn't invent a single piece of groundbreaking technology. He didn't write a line of software. He didn't create a new industry. Instead, he did something far more powerful and far more subtle. He completely mastered the underlying source code of the modern economy, the United States fiat dollar. How exactly does a man go from having absolutely $0 to sitting on a staggering net worth of over $150 billion, while his company, Berkshire Hathaway, hoards nearly $300 billion in pure cash? The mainstream financial gurus will tell you it is simply the reward for saving your pennies, skipping your morning coffee, and buying diversified index funds. But that is a lie. That is the advice designed for the working class, not the blueprint of an empire. In this video, we are going to tear down the myth of the Oracle of Omaha. We are going to look past the charming quotes and the humble lifestyle to expose the brutal economic reality of how his empire was actually built. We are going to reveal how Buffett did not just survive the fiat financial system, but actively weaponized it. You will see how he used the very forces that keep the middle class poor, like inflation, and turn them into his greatest advantage. And most importantly, we will uncover the ultimate, perfectly legal cheat code of capitalism that he discovered in the 1960s, the infinite loop of free money known as the insurance float. This is not a story about a man who was just good at picking stocks. This is the story of the ultimate fiat billionaire. This is how Warren Buffett hacked the global economy. Most people believe that massive wealth is generated through a sudden, brilliant invention or a massive stroke of luck. But Warren Buffett's empire was not built on a single lightning strike moment. It was built on a mechanical, almost obsessive understanding of numbers, starting before he was even a teenager. At exactly 11 years old, while Europe was engulfed in the flames of World War II and the rest of his friends were reading comic books, Warren bought his first shares of stock. He purchased 3 shares of Citi Service Preferred at $38 apiece. The stock quickly dropped to $27. He patiently held on until it recovered to $40, and then he sold, locking in a tiny profit. But almost immediately after he sold, the stock rocketed to nearly $200 a share. That was his first brutal lesson in the financial markets. In the fiat system, the transfer of wealth always goes from the impatient to the patient. But Buffett didn't just want to wait, he wanted to generate cash. As a teenager, he took a job delivering the Washington Post. But he didn't just throw papers on porches. He calculated the most mathematically efficient routes to deliver the maximum number of papers in the shortest amount of time, earning more than most adults at the time. By age 15, he had amassed $2,000 in pure cash, a staggering amount for a kid in the 1940s. But the true awakening, the moment Buffett understood the fundamental cheat code of capitalism, happened in 1946 with a simple piece of junk. High school student Warren Buffett and a friend bought a broken, used pinball machine for just $25. They fixed it up, walked into a local barber shop, and pitched a deal to the owner. "Let us put this machine in the back of your shop for your waiting customers, and we will split the profits." On the very first day, they collected $4 in nickels. For a normal teenager, that $4 is spending money. For Buffett, it was capital. He didn't buy a bicycle or a comic book. He immediately took those profits and bought a second used pinball machine, then a third. Soon, he had a small empire of pinball machines spread across the city, generating cash 24 hours a day. He eventually sold the business for $1,200. It wasn't about the pinball machines, it was the realization of a profound economic law. The fundamental trap of the working class is that they trade their limited physical time for money. If you stop working, the money stops flowing. Buffett realized that true wealth is achieved when your capital works completely independent of your physical labor. You trade money to buy systems that print money while you sleep. And when you combine that cash-flowing system with time, you unlock the most destructive, unstoppable force in finance: compounding. Buffett likes to compare his wealth building to a snowball. If you start with a small snowball and roll it down a very long hill with sticky snow, it eventually becomes an absolute avalanche. The human brain is biologically hardwired to think in linear terms: 1, 2, 3, 4. But compounding is exponential. It grows silently at first and then violently. Here is the most mind-bending statistic about Warren Buffett's $150 billion empire. He started investing at age 11. By age 50, he was a millionaire. But a staggering 99% of his total net worth was accumulated after his 50th birthday. In a fiat economic system, inflation is designed to silently steal the purchasing power of your savings. The system punishes those who hold cash. But Buffett understood that if you own cash-flowing compounding assets, inflation actually becomes your engine. As the nominal currency loses value, the nominal price of your compounding assets explodes upward. He had the snowball, and he had the long hill. But to build an empire that could rival the GDP of entire countries, he needed a specific strategy to pick the right assets. He needed to find the cigar butts discarded by Wall Street. Warren Buffett had the snowball, and he had the long hill of time. But to truly hack the financial system, he needed a specific methodology to select the right assets. He needed to find the exact points where the market was fundamentally mispricing reality. He found his blueprint in a man named Benjamin Graham, the godfather of value investing. While studying at Columbia University, Buffett learned Graham's core philosophy. The stock market is not a perfectly rational weighing machine. It is a highly emotional, manic-depressive entity that Graham famously called Mr. Market. Some days, Mr. Market is euphoric and prices businesses far too high. Other days, he is terrified and prices them far too low. Graham taught Buffett to ignore the emotion and focus entirely on the cold, hard math of a company's balance sheet. He taught him to look for cigar butts. The concept is brilliantly simple, yet perfectly captures the ruthless nature of early Buffett. Imagine walking down the street and seeing a discarded cigar butt lying on the wet pavement. It is ugly, it is soggy, and nobody wants it. But if you pick it up, there is exactly one free puff left inside it. In the financial world, a cigar butt was a terrible, dying company whose stock price had crashed so hard that it was actually trading for less than its net working capital. If you bought the entire company and immediately liquidated it, sold the factories, the inventory, and the desks, you would mathematically make a guaranteed profit. Buffett became obsessed with this strategy. He didn't care what the company actually made. He didn't care if it had a future. He just wanted the free puff. And this ruthless, purely quantitative strategy led him to a dying textile mill in New England, a company named Berkshire Hathaway. In the early 1960s, Berkshire Hathaway was a sinking ship. The American textile industry was collapsing as cheaper manufacturing moved overseas. The company was closing mills, firing workers, and bleeding cash. By all traditional metrics, it was a terrible business. But to Warren Buffett, it was the perfect cigar butt. The stock was trading incredibly cheap compared to the assets it owned. Buffett began quietly buying up shares, planning to sell them back to the management at a slight profit when they liquidated more mills. He reached a verbal agreement with Berkshire's president, Seabury Staunton, to sell his shares back for exactly $11.50 per share. But when the official written offer arrived in the mail, it was for $11.375. Staunton had tried to squeeze Buffett out of 12.5 cents per share. For the architect of the ultimate wealth machine, this was not just an insult, it was a breach of contract. Out of pure, calculated spite, Buffett refused to sell. Instead, he aggressively bought up the majority of the company's stock, took total control of Berkshire Hathaway, and immediately fired Seabury Staunton. He had won the battle, but economically, he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Buffett was now the proud owner of a fundamentally broken, capital-intensive business in a dying industry. No matter how much money he poured into the textile mills to upgrade the equipment, the returns on capital were disastrous. This was his second massive economic awakening. He realized that the cigar butt strategy had a fatal flaw. If you buy a terrible business, time is your enemy. The longer you hold it, the more money it burns. The math of compounding only works if the underlying asset actually generates excess cash over time. He needed to extract whatever remaining cash the dying textile mills were generating and redirect it into something better. He needed a vehicle that didn't consume capital, but produced it. He needed a way to play the game with other people's money. And that is when he discovered the ultimate cheat code of the fiat financial system.
Warren Buffett had a massive problem. The dying textile mills of Berkshire Hathaway were a capital incinerator, but more importantly, he was running into the ultimate mathematical limit of value investing. Eventually, you run out of your own cash. In the brutal world of high finance, if you want to turn millions into billions, you cannot do it using only your own money. You need leverage. You need other people's money. But in the traditional fiat system, getting your hands on other people's money comes with a lethal catch: interest. If you borrow billions from a bank or issue corporate bonds, you have to pay a strict interest rate every single month, regardless of whether the economy is booming or crashing. Debt is a double-edged sword. It amplifies your gains, but during an economic recession, the relentless gravity of interest payments will bankrupt you. Buffett knew that if he took on massive Wall Street debt to buy companies, one bad recession could wipe out his entire empire. He needed a glitch in the matrix. He needed a way to acquire billions of dollars of leverage, completely legally, without ever paying a single cent of interest to a bank. In fact, he needed a system where people would actually pay him to hold their money. In 1967, he found that exact glitch. He found the ultimate cheat code of modern capitalism: the insurance industry. To the average person, insurance is just a boring monthly bill you pay for your car or your house. But to an economic predator like Warren Buffett, an insurance company is a legal money-printing press. Here is the brilliant, asymmetrical economic reality of the insurance business model. It is a collect now, pay later system. When you buy auto insurance from a company like Geico, you pay your premium up front today. You might not get into a car crash for 5 years, 10 years, or maybe never. For that entire decade, the insurance company is holding your cash. They don't just put that money in a vault. They pool together the premiums from millions of customers. This massive waiting pool of cash is called the float. It is money that doesn't technically belong to the insurance company, but they get to hold it, control it, and most importantly, invest it until a claim is finally paid out. In March of 1967, Buffett used the last of Berkshire Hathaway's dying textile cash to buy a company called National Indemnity for $8.6 million. He didn't buy it because he was passionate about insurance. He bought it because it came with $17 million of float. He instantly gained $17 million of absolutely free leverage. If the insurance company writes good policies and brings in more premiums than it pays out in claims, the cost of holding that float drops below zero. People are literally paying Warren Buffett to invest their money for them. This is the exact moment Berkshire Hathaway transitioned from a failing textile mill into an unstoppable apex predator holding company. Buffett began aggressively buying up insurance companies, eventually taking total control of Geico. As the float grew from millions to billions, he took this zero-interest free money and deployed it into the stock market. While the American middle class was taking on high-interest credit card debt to buy depreciating liabilities like televisions and cars, Buffett was using zero-interest float to buy massive stakes in cash-flowing, blue-chip monopolies like Coca-Cola, American Express, and Gillette. But there is an even deeper, darker layer to this economic hack, one that perfectly exploits the design of the fiat financial system. In a fiat economy, governments constantly print money, causing inflation. Inflation guarantees that the purchasing power of a dollar today will be drastically lower a decade from now. When Buffett collects your insurance premium today, he is collecting strong dollars with high purchasing power. He takes those strong dollars and buys hard, cash-flowing assets. 10 years later, when you finally get into a car crash and file a claim, he pays you back using weak, heavily inflated dollars. He's shorting the fiat currency and letting inflation destroy the real value of the claims he owes, all while his assets compound to the moon. Today, Berkshire Hathaway's float sits at a staggering $160 billion. That is $160 billion of free, permanent capital that he can deploy at the moment's notice to buy almost anything on Earth. He had the money and he had the leverage, but to make this empire bulletproof, he had to stop buying cigar butts and start buying castles.
Warren Buffett had unlocked an infinite supply of free money through his insurance float. But what exactly do you buy when you have billions of dollars of zero-interest leverage burning a hole in your pocket? For a long time, Buffett was still stuck in his old ways. He was still looking for cheap, dying cigar butts. But his brilliant business partner, the late Charlie Munger, fundamentally changed the trajectory of Berkshire Hathaway. Munger gave Buffett a harsh, necessary reality check. He told him to forget what he knew about buying fair businesses at wonderful prices, and instead focus entirely on buying wonderful businesses at fair prices. Munger realized that a terrible business, even if bought cheaply, will eventually bleed your capital dry, but a truly wonderful business will compound your wealth forever. To identify these wonderful businesses, Buffett popularized a concept that is now legendary on Wall Street: the economic moat. Imagine a massive, wealthy medieval castle. To protect the gold inside from invading armies, you need a wide, deep moat filled with crocodiles. In the capitalist system, your competitors are the invading army. If you start a highly profitable business, competitors will immediately try to steal your customers and destroy your profit margins. A business with an economic moat has a structural, almost unfair advantage that makes it impossible to compete against. Think of Apple's absolute dominance over the smartphone ecosystem, where switching to an Android feels like a massive inconvenience for the user. Or Coca-Cola's century-old brand identity. No matter how many cheaper generic colas are created, consumers around the world will always pay a premium for the iconic red can. But the most crucial element of a wide moat, especially for someone trying to hack the fiat currency system, is something called pricing power. In a fiat economy, the central bank constantly prints money, silently eroding the purchasing power of the dollar. Inflation is the invisible tax that destroys the savings of the middle class. But Buffett realized that if you own a monopoly with absolute pricing power, inflation doesn't hurt you at all. In fact, it makes your nominal wealth explode. If the US dollar loses 20% of its value over a decade, a company with pricing power like Apple, See's Candies, or Gillette simply raises the price of their products by 20%. Because their economic moat is so strong and consumer loyalty is so high, people have no choice but to pay the higher price. The company's profit margins remain perfectly intact, but the sheer volume of fiat currency flowing into Berkshire Hathaway's pockets skyrockets.
He used his zero-cost insurance float to buy massive stakes in these inflation-proof monopolies. He wasn't just investing in the stock market, he was building a financial fortress that actively thrived on the exact same inflation that was bankrupting the average American. It is the ultimate capitalist checkmate. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of the global economy and want to uncover the brutal realities behind how billionaires and massive corporations actually build their wealth, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming documentaries.
It is no secret that Warren Buffett absolutely despises cryptocurrency. He's famously called Bitcoin rat poison squared, a delusion, and has publicly stated that if you offered him all the Bitcoin in the world for just $25, he wouldn't take it. To the younger generation of investors who see Bitcoin as the ultimate hard money and a necessary escape from a corrupt fiat system, Buffett's hatred for crypto seems like the stubborn ignorance of an old man who simply doesn't understand technology. But if you look closely at the machine he built, his hatred for Bitcoin makes perfect logical sense. Bitcoin does not produce a quarterly dividend. It does not have a CEO that can raise prices to fight inflation. And most importantly, you cannot use it to generate an infinite zero-interest insurance float. Bitcoin is a decentralized hard asset designed to strip power away from the very fiat system that Buffett spent 80 years perfectly hacking. He is the undisputed king of fiat, and Bitcoin is a direct threat to the mechanics of his empire. Warren Buffett's legacy is not that of a visionary inventor or a tech pioneer. His legacy is that of the ultimate capitalist mechanic. He looked at the United States economy, understood the mathematical inevitability of inflation, recognized the immense leverage hidden inside the insurance industry, and used compounding interest to siphon wealth out of the system at a scale never before seen in human history. He didn't just play the game of capitalism, he solved it. But as the global economy rapidly shifts away from the traditional fiat system and towards decentralized finance, artificial intelligence, and hard digital assets, we're left with a massive question. Is the Berkshire Hathaway model the blueprint of the future, or is it the final, brilliant masterpiece of a dying economic era? Buffett hacked the system to build a personal fortune of $150 billion, but in the grand scheme of modern global finance, even he is just a player on the board. There is another financial entity out there that didn't just hack the system, they practically own the system. They manage over $10 trillion in assets. They own a massive piece of almost every major corporation on Earth, including Berkshire Hathaway. They do not just pick stocks, they silently dictate the policies of global governments and control the very fabric of the world economy. If you want to know who is really pulling the strings of global finance today, you need to watch my deep dive right now. BlackRock, the shadow government ruling the world. Click the video on your screen right now or find the link down in the pinned comment below. The illusion of the free market is breaking. I will see you in that video.